video, I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful beginner crochet throw. This throw uses the brand new Red Heart Super Saver Chunky yarn, which is a beautiful yarn in the Red Heart Super Saver you love, just a little bit thicker. It comes in many beautiful colors, so choose the one you like best and you can make this beautiful throw. The pattern for this throw is available for free over on redheart.com. I'm going to put a link to the throw and the materials you'll need right down there in the video description box below this video. Make sure you download that free pattern and follow along with me in this video, and you will have a really great throw in no time. This is a beginner video, so I will go a little bit slower and give a little bit more instruction than I would if it were a more advanced video. That way, those of you who are brand new crocheters will have no problem with these instructions. Okay, let's go ahead and get the materials and the pattern. Join me back here and we will get started with this really great beginner crochet throw. You have your materials and your pattern. Let's go ahead and jump in. The first thing you need to know is when you're looking at a Super Saver chunky skein of yarn, this is a center pull skein. So if you look at the side of the skein, you'll see that there is a bit that is hanging out and that allows you to pull directly from the center. Great, I love it when the skein allows us to do that. What we're going to do to start off is get a little bit of yarn out so that way we can create a slip knot. A slip knot is what you need to make to begin all of your crochet projects. For a slip knot, place the tail of the yarn in your hand. Take the working yarn, wrap it around your forefinger and your middle finger, and when you come back up, go ahead and cross over. Now turn your hand, go underneath that front loop, grab the back loop, and off. If you pull apart these two legs of the yarn, you'll see that that tightens up that little loop there, and that is your slip knot. We will place our slip knot directly onto our hook. The hook for this pattern calls for a size 9mm or an M hook. Once you place that loop directly on your hook, go ahead and tighten it up just ever so slightly. Now, when you are crocheting, it's important that you make these chains very consistent and not too tight. When you're using this hook, you'll notice that there is a portion of the hook that is more inline and tapered. And then there's a portion right here that is really nice and solid and flat. Each of your stitches need to be this size, not this size. So as you create your chains, you want to make sure that they are ultimately the size of this part of your hook. Don't only make them this size or they'll be too small. Let me show you what I mean. To do a chain stitch, go ahead and hold the tail of your yarn out of the way. Grasp your working yarn and take your needle, working around the yarn just like so. You're going to grab it. And what we will do now is we're going to pull this yarn we just put on our hook through the slip knot that's on our hook. And in order to do that, what I like to do is when I'm coming back through, I will rotate my hook upside down. Can you see it's upside down? And it's easier to pull through that chain with the hook on the down portion. Now I'll make sure that that loop that I just pulled through goes back to that portion of my hook, and that lets me know that that chain is now that size. Great. Now I can repeat. I go around and then pull that through. Push that portion back up on that part of the hook and allows it to be that size. For this particular throw, you want to chain a total of 83 chains. Because I'm not making the full throw in this video, I'm only doing 13, but I can show you how the instructions work on these 13 stitches. Now when looking at your instructions, you'll see that it wants you to do a single crochet in the second chain from hook. It's important to note that you will never count the loop on your hook or the stitch on your hook as a stitch, okay? This is never counted. So when you're counting these chains, notice that they look like they're V's. They're just little V's resting there. I want you to count 1, 2. In this second one, we're going to go ahead and put our hook directly into that chain. And I'm just going to grab the top loop of that chain right there, okay? You could grab any portion of the chain you want, but if you want to follow along with me, let's go ahead and just grab that top portion. Once you've put your hook into that second chain from hook, we are now going to do a single crochet. For a single crochet, you will yarn over your hook, pull that yarn over through the chain that we went into, just like we did when we were making chains. And now we have 2 chains on our hook. Once you have those 2 chains on your hook, you can complete the single crochet by yarning over your hook and then pulling through those 2 chains. Congratulations, you just completed a single crochet. Now, let's put a single crochet in each chain all the way down the row. The best thing you can do now is take a look at your chains and see where your stitch was worked into in the previous chain. And then look for the next chain over. So there it is right there. Put your hook into that the top loop, that back loop. Go ahead, yarn over your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over your hook, draw through 2. Go into the next chain, go into that back stitch, the back loop, yarn over your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over your hook, draw through 2. Are you getting the hang of it? Let's go ahead and complete the rest of the row with single crochets. Once you're done with your row, it looks a little something like this. Congratulations, you just did your first row of single crochets. Now it's time to move on to row 2. After row 1, you turn your work, and that allows you to work on the stitches you've just created. We begin row 2 with a chain 2. 1, 2. And it's important to note this chain 2 counts as a double crochet. So you will not place your first double crochet into this space right here. We will actually begin our first double crochet over here into this stitch, okay? So for a double crochet, you yarn over your hook to start. Again, we're not going to go into this first one. We're going to go into the next one over. Go ahead and put your hook into that stitch. And by doing that, you'll see you have those 2 loops, the V, so the front loop and the back loop is on your hook. That's what you want, okay? So we want to be in that whole stitch right there. Yarn over your hook and pull up a loop. Now yarn over your hook, draw through 2, yarn over your hook, draw through 2. Congratulations, you just did your first double crochet. Now we want to put a double crochet into each stitch all the way down the row. So you yarn over your hook to start, go into the next stitch over, put your hook in, make sure you have both legs on there, okay, the front loop and the back loop. Yarn over your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. Yarn over your hook, go into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. You will do this all the way down the row, and at the end of row 2, you will have a total of 82 stitches. Don't forget that when you're counting your stitches, you need to count that initial chain 2 as a double crochet. When you get to the end of your row, make sure you get that double crochet in that very first single crochet you completed on the previous row, so that way you get the correct count. What's really awesome is with this pattern, Marty Miller wrote it in such a way that we don't have to work into our stitches anymore for rows 3 through 89. We're still going to be working double crochets, but we will be placing the double crochets between all the double crochets from the previous row. So if you had a little bit of a hard time finding where that stitch was to work into, this time it's going to be a little bit easier. Let me show you why. Row 3 for this blanket has you go ahead and turn your work again so you can work along these stitches you've just created. But now, instead of working into each of the stitches individually, we're going to work into the spaces between the double crochets. So let's go ahead and begin. Row 3 has you start with a chain 2. This chain 2 counts as a double crochet, okay? But we are going to work into this space between these two double crochets with our first stitch. So you yarn over your hook, go between these two double crochets, yarn over your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. Now I'll yarn over my hook, go between these two double crochets, so I'm going to that big space, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. I continue this all the way down the row. This makes it really easy for beginners, and Marty Miller wrote it really wonderfully by making this so that way you don't have to search for the actual stitch to work into, but if you're working between the space that is created with the double crochets, it's really easy to maintain a really nice consistency with the stitches. You don't have to count and search too much. It's wonderful for beginners, especially keeping our edges nice and straight because we don't have to worry about finding where that last stitch is. As long as we're working between these two double crochets, it all works out. At the end of the row, you should have your 82 double crochets for your blanket. Make sure you have that. If you end up coming up one short, then you're doing something wrong. And it could be that you're just not placing your double crochet in that very first space like I showed you to do. Now, for rows 3 through 89, we just did row 3. So as we turn our work, we will repeat row 3 for row 4. So I've chained 2. Yarn over my hook, go into this space right here created from this double crochet and this one, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. Now I will go in between these two double crochets and work a double crochet there as well. Go between these two and work a double crochet there as well. Go ahead and continue on in the pattern through row 89. Once you get done with row 89, it's time for the edging. Now, the only other thing you might need to know as a beginner is when you get to the end of a skein of yarn, how do you start a new skein of yarn? So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. The best thing to do when you need to add a new skein of yarn is to finish your row. Even if you have enough yarn to get maybe down half another row, don't do that. You want to make sure that you change your yarns at the edge. It's much better that way. What you want to do is go ahead and work your last stitch. So I went in here, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. But this next draw through 2, what I want to do is instead of using my green, I will go ahead and I'm going to change a different color just so you can see what I'm doing. You would grab your new skein of yarn. It would be the same color of yarn if you're making the blanket. But you will just hold that new yarn next to the old, yarn over your hook with the new yarn, and then pull that through. That simple action there allows you to join the new ball of yarn, and it lets you have your tails down here on the edge of your work, so that way you can weave in your ends. Once you've done that, you can go ahead, you could carry on with your pattern by doing your chain 2, and then working your double crochets just like you were doing before. See how this works? And these two tails here, they'll just hang out. Now for me, I like to go ahead and weave in my tails right after I get done adding the new skein of yarn because I don't like a lot of ends to weave in at the end. So you can do that now or you can do that later. It doesn't really matter, but I'm going to show you how to do it now. What you'll want to do is grab a bent tip tapestry needle. I love these needles. They have a really nice big eye and they have a nice bent tip, making it easy to get into the stitches. Go ahead and take one of the tails of yarn and thread it onto your bent tip tapestry needle. Now, all you want to do is going between the yarn here, I'm actually splitting the yarn, okay? I'm not going just underneath the full loop. You can see here, I'm actually splitting the yarn, and I'll pull that through. Now, going back the opposite direction, I will make sure that not only am I splitting the yarn of the project, but the yarn that I just pulled through, okay? So I have my needle going through all of that, and I'm popping it back this way. So I went down and back. If I don't feel like that's secure enough, I could go ahead and go down this way, just down the post of a stitch, and then come back up. Some of you newbies might be asking, why aren't you just crocheting over those edges? Well, as a longtime crocheter and a professional crochet designer, I'm here to tell you that I do not recommend just crocheting over your ends or your tails to weave them in. Inevitably, they always come untucked. It's best to always just take the time and weave them in with the tapestry needle. It really doesn't take that long, and you'll be much more happier for it. Once you've woven in your tail enough where you like it, go ahead and give it a snip, and it's nice and secure. You'll do the same thing with your other tail. Now, obviously, my tails are two different colors because I changed to a different color just so you could see. But if this were the green, I could weave it in just into the green, no problem. If I were weaving this in as if it were a different color, I would want to just make sure I weave it in within the same color. Does that make sense? All right, so go ahead, finish the body of your project, and then join me back here. I'm going to show you how to do the edging on my little swatch, and that way you can make it on your big throw. Okay, so you have the body of your throw complete and you're ready for the edging. It's just one round, making it really simple, but it really just ties up all of the body of your throw and makes it look really nice. Plus, if you've gone ahead and woven in your ends, it's just another way to make sure that they're nice and secure. So here we go. For this portion, I will go ahead and show you how to do this with a different color so you can see the stitches. You begin round one by turning your work, and we will go ahead and we will do a chain one. Now that we've done this chain one, we will place a single crochet into each stitch all the way down this row. So where before we were working into the space between those double crochets, we're going back to where we're working into these stitches. So I will put my hook directly into that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through two. That's a single crochet. I go into the next stitch. Remember, we've been putting our hook there, but now I actually want to work into the actual stitch. That's where I have the V on my hook, okay? Once I do that, I yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through two. Go into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through two. So I will put a single crochet into each stitch all the way down this row. When I get to the end of this row, I'm actually going to rotate my blanket 90 degrees and work along the edge of the blanket. So let me get down to the end of this row. There we go. All right, so I just got to the end of my row. I'm over here to the side. Once you've reached the end of that row, you'll rotate your work 90 degrees. Once you rotate your work 90 degrees, you'll notice that we're looking at the edge of the blanket, and this is where we are going to work stitches. We are going to put one single crochet at the end of one row, and then two single crochets at the end of the next. 1, 2, 1, 2, all the way down until we get to the end of this row. So we'll start off here. I am going to go ahead and put a single crochet into this first one just to get a nice turn around this corner. I think that looks better. And now I will go ahead and jump into the pattern. If you're looking at the pattern, you'll notice that there is a star next to this next set of instructions. That star indicates that that is where you're going to work the repeat. So everything within from star to where it says repeat from star, that's what you're going to repeat. So the star says that we will put 2 single crochets into this next row, and I'm literally working my single crochets around the entire double crochet, or if it were the chain 2 representing a double crochet, I'm just going around the whole thing. Now in the next row I will put 1 single crochet, and this is where the pattern says repeat from star across. So in the next row, if I go back to the star, it says to do 2 single crochet, and in the next row I do 1 single crochet. I'm not to the end of the row, so I would go ahead and repeat from star. So I would do 2 single crochet, and then 1 single crochet. I'm to the edge of my work, so I would go ahead, rotate my work 90 degrees. And now this part might seem tricky because we are now going to work along the foundation edge. So this is our foundation chain, and we're going to work into these loops that we did not work into before. It's not hard at all. Now that I've rotated my work, we're going to go ahead and single crochet into each one of these stitches. So I will just look for that loop. I will go into it, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. Go to the next loop. You see it right there? Okay. You can go into the loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. Go to the next loop, so on and so forth. See how this is working? It's just working on the opposite side of that foundation chain that you did at the start. I'm just working single crochets. You know how to do these. Once you get to the end of that row, you will go ahead, rotate your work, and once again, we're going to work along this edge again. Now on this side, Marty Miller changes it up ever so slightly, so make sure we follow along with the instructions. You'll see that it says to put a single crochet in the first 2 rows. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put one right here, and I'll put one right here. Okay, so those are the first 2 rows. We have a single crochet. And then it says to go ahead and do 2 single crochets in the next row. So I'll put 1 and 2. Now you'll see here's where the star is again. So it says star, single crochet in the next row, 2 single crochets in the next row, 1 and 2. And then you would repeat single crochet and then 2 single crochet. And you would do this all the way up until you get to the end. When you get to the end of the row, you would go ahead and join with a slip stitch. So this was my first single crochet I completed. I will go ahead and go into that stitch, yarn over, pull through, and then pull through the loop that's on my hook. Let me show you that one more time. So I have a loop on my hook. I go into that first stitch I created, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then for a slip stitch, I'm going to pull that loop through the one that's on my hook, and then I will do 1 chain and that finishes it off. So I can go ahead, cut my yarn, always leave at least 4 to 6 inches of tail so that way I have something to weave in, give it a pull, and you have a nice simple edging around your blanket. This is a very fun, fast project, especially with the new Super Saver chunky yarn. This goes by in no time because you're using a big hook and big yarn. You can't go wrong there. Hopefully you found this video helpful and you've created a really beautiful beginner crochet throw for yourself or for your loved one.